Okay, let's recap. See, in yesterday's session, we have gone through, or rather, we have started looking into history, right? And as far as history is concerned, it is divided into two major categories as Indian history and world history. And both these histories have been further categorized as ancient, medieval, modern, and some miscellaneous parts. So Indian history is in these three AMMM. And also the world history is also divided into ancient history, medieval history, and modern history. And obviously there is always some miscellaneous part of the history. For example, the origin of science and technology in the world, right? So though it is not actually part of history, but how the ages have been changed, right? So that you will always considering it. And then naturally the next question comes in, that is what you will be calling the history, right? Or how would you define the history? So it is nothing but a simply the studies of the past, right? So past you can consider the history. Again, there would be a different question that how the word history have been uh, derived. So the word history had derived by a Greek word called historia, right? So a Greek word historia stands for history. So historia means the research, inquiry, or investigation, right? It can be a research, inquiry, or investigation. So the knowledge acquired through the investigation is always termed as historia. Fine. So as far as the first historian of the world is concerned, right, who is known as the father of history. So Herodotus had been called as father of history by a Roman philosopher, Cicero. So Herodotus uh, was a writer of a book, The Histories, which describes the background and the events of the Greek-Iranian wars. Then later on, a German historian, Leopold von Ranke, who was termed as the father of modern history, said that history repeats itself. History repeats itself. Right? So that is what you can consider. Later on again, the same statement had been extended as history repeats itself, first as tragedy and second as farce by uh, an economist and a philosopher, Karl Marx, who was a German economist and a philosopher. Karl Marx was greatly known as the economist. Right. Then later on, a British historian named as Carr said that the history is an unending dialogue between past and present. Right. So these are the different views to look into or to look towards the history according to different historians, historian of the world, historian of the modern history. Then a British historian. Right. Then later on we have moved to a system of dating. So how you will be dating, right? So right. So you will be having two different kinds of dates, right, or the dating, which is called system of dating. One is the before Christ, and another is the Anno Domini. So before Christ is considered as before the birth of Jesus Christ, right? Before the birth of Jesus Christ. So it is a English phrase denoted by BC. Another phrase, which is a Latin phrase called Anno Domini, denoted by AD, is in the year of Lord Jesus, right? From the birth of the Lord Jesus you can consider. Right, so BC and AD are the two systems that you have for dating. Then there is a timeline which displays the events and the past time. Right, events of the past time on a line. So display of the events of past time. So here you will be having a line, right, whose right side you can consider as AD and left as BC. And there you will be always having two different views. So BC is always counted backward. BC is always counted backward. For example, 500 BC, 499 BC, 498 BC, up to 3 BC, 2 BC, 1 BC. And another, that is Anno Domini, which is always counted forward. For example, 180, 280, 380, 2008, 2002, 2019, 2020, then 2021, right? So that is the case you can consider. And I think the last part of the session we have gone through is the time glossary. Time glossary. So in time glossary, different terms or the terminologies such as decade, century, first half of century, second half of century, millennium, right, have been considered. That's what we have considered in the previous session. Fine. Now, see, today we are ending the month. Fine. So you can consider the things as we have considered, like in the first month, right? So what we have gone through. So it's a 31st July 2020. Fine. So anybody who can remember what we have considered? There were no many things, but some of the things you can consider, right? So as a new field or title, there are very less things, right? As a matter, you will be having much more, right? So that's what we can consider. I think if someone wants to have a screenshot of okay, I will show you. Right. Prior to that, we will just consider the fine. So see, on 1st of July, we are considering the awards, right? Awards, particularly Dadasaheb Phalke Award, then Saraswati Samman Award, Arjuna Award, Rajiv Gandhi Khel Ratna Award, Dhyanchand Award, then Dronacharya Award, Shanti Swarup Bhattacharya Award, right? That is what we have considered on first. Then we have gone for the important organizations. Yes. Important organizations and headquarters. And headquarters. So this has long lasted to 2nd, 3rd, then 4th July, then later on 5th July, right? 6th July, 7th July, then 8th July, and right? So it was up to 8th July. You can consider. Fine. 8th July. So 2 to 8 1. Then here we have considered the high courts. Right, I think it was 8th. Right. Then yes. Then we have gone for 9 and 10th July, the stadiums, right? Important stadiums in India. Fine. Important stadiums in India. Then we have also started first in India, especially in the institutions on the same date, which was continued on 10th, 11th, right, 12th July. Fine. Then we have gone to the countries, capitals, and currencies from 13th of July. So countries, capitals, and currencies. Right, later on we have added languages, other official languages. Plus PM or president. PM or president, right? And which had been two. Okay. Which had lasted till 20th. Right. So then from 21st we have gone for commandos. Right. So we have considered the commandos. Right. Most of the things we have considered in this particular case, that is of the commandos. And then later on we have terminated it, and obviously in the last session we considered the history, right? So yes, then 30th we have started history. Right. So I think someone wants the screenshot of this one. Fine. So that's what we can consider in. Now let's continue in this one. My suggestion is that regularly you must go through the awards, important organizations, right? And always try to add up something in it. Always try to go into detail of one of these, right? That is always necessary. Fine. So it is a, by and large, it is a very, very great part for interviews, not only for the returns, but also from other point of view. It is also necessary. So let's go to the next. Fine. So what you can have July 31st. See, here in you can consider See, generally the history is divided into two parts, and therefore it is called a Tripartite division. So you can have a point of periods, right? So generally history, right, divides into two parts. So first part you can consider is prehistoric, and second you can consider it as historic. Since it is having two different types, right? So this is called bipartite. See, nobody will be asking you a question on this one, but this is always necessary in order to understand the other consequences. So it is a bipartite division. Fine. So it is a bipartite division. Now here question comes in, what is the prehistoric? Right. So in bipartite, you are having a prehistoric. So what is prehistoric? Right. Anything which have no written evidences. Right. So not only before independence. No, it's not like that. That is the part of, then further it is again being divided into modern, right? So that would be a part of modern. So prehistoric is when you have no written evidences. When you have no written evidences, it's called prehistoric. Or you can consider it as before writing. So the part of history when there was no writing, right? When there was no writing is called before writing. So what was its age, or what was the time period? So if you can consider from 30 lakh years, right? Yes, 30 lakhs years, that is BC, to a 600 BC, right? 30 lakhs BC to 600 BC, right? So there was a beginning. So from the beginning to a period you can consider up to the Vedic culture, right? Up to Vedic culture. So at the latter Vedic culture, which ends in 600 BC, right? So that would be the case you can always consider in this particular case. Or in another way, till the starting of the religious movements, particularly Buddhism or the Jainism, right? So till that period you can consider the prehistoric part, where there was no writing, right? And therefore you have no written evidences of that particular time period. So whatever is being carried out through the families or the chronologies, only that is, right? So this is considered as the prehistoric. Then understanding history is then very easy. So what is historic, you can consider in this. So historic is the other word you can always consider in this case, which has the written evidences, right? So historic period have written evidences. Historic period have written evidences, right? Or the period which is having written evidences is known as historic period. Fine. So this particular is the historic written evidence, is having historical written evidence. Means what? It must be after writing. Right? It must be after writing. So writing must have started. Then what is the time period? So 600 BC to anybody? To apply your common sense. 600 BC to, I think, just yes. I think only Srivastava is attending the session. The rest of others are just kept there. Okay, my crash, that's fine. Right. So you don't want to. Okay, Aditya wanted it to yesterday, and Megraj, I think, wanted only before COVID. So he don't want to, I think, include it in COVID. Right. So simply you can consider it till date. Right. So the best answer. Anyway, so historic period is from 600 BC to the till date. Fine. Yes, Akshay. So that's what we can always consider this. Now, later on, there had been a tripartite division of history, right? Which is more prevalent in practice, right? So according to this theory, the history is divided into three periods, which is called a tripartite division or a tripartite period. So tripartite, kind of bipartite Sudaradi version. So tripartite division. By and large, both the periods have come as it is. So one is called the prehistoric period, right? So prehistoric period, fine. So prehistoric period, which has no written evidences, right? Same as, fine. And example of this, you can consider anybody, lithic age or the lithic period, Ashmayugin Kal, right? Lithic period, fine. So which has no written evidences available for it, fine. That is the first one. Then second, in this case, you can consider, since it is already, see, all these 3 points are as it is in this, right? Only what I said, it is a slightly improved version of this one, because what is the actual point of distinction between these two? That is called the third uh, third division of the period, right? And whose name is called proto-historic period. So it becomes second in this proto-historic period. So it is a proto-historic period. So prehistoric period and proto-historic period. So if in this case, if you consider a time, right? If I consider from 30 lakhs BC to here, we have considered 600 BC. So I will be considering here 200 BC. Right. Now, in this case, I will be considering from 200 BC to 600 BC. So by and large, prehistoric period and protohistoric period is nothing but the prehistoric period of the bipartite division. So the first two parts of the tripartite division, which are prehistoric period and protohistoric period, altogether covering the period from 30 lakh years back to 600 years, right? Which is nothing but the prehistoric period of the bipartite division, having the same time period from 30 lakh BC years to 600 BC, right? So this is what we can consider. So here now, the distinction in between these two is more clear by the protohistoric period, right? So this is the period for which the evidence is available, but either script, right, or right. So you can consider here the written, you can consider written evidences were available, right? Were available. If something is given to you which you don't know, or you cannot read it, not only you, not your family members, not your neighbors, right? Most of the things, if you go to a very specialized one, and probably it will be one or two, right? So it is of no use. So the evidence asun to पुरावा असून का उपयोगाचा आहे का? नाही. So written evidences were available, but they were not deciphered, right? So available, particularly I will be writing here the word scripts, in the scripts, right? But not deciphered. What is deciphered? Right, meaning of deciphered. They were not deciphered or hasn't been deciphered. That means what? They were not coded, decoded. ते काय हे वाचता येत नव्हतं, कळत नव्हतं, right? How to decode them, right? How to unfold them, right? So that is the deciphered. Right? So whatever may be the written documents which had been there, then which haven't been again confirmed by archaeological evidences, right? I think archaeological, maybe yesterday I have said that archaeological evidences are very important. You will be always believing if it is supported by archaeological evidences, and whatever may be other evidences, right? So other evidences not confirmed by the archaeology. CHAEO, archaeological, confirmed by archaeological evidences, right? So they were present in between this period, but there were two things. First, no archaeological confirmation, and second, no decipheration, right? So that was the period, and therefore it was considered in this one. So what was that period? So examples of this period, two examples you can consider. First example is Indus civilization. Indus civilization. Second period, Vedic period, or the Vedic culture. Vedic culture. So these were the two time periods which you can consider as the proto-historic period, right? Or the period in between 2000 BC to 600 BC. Fine, that would be the case. In some of the resources or some of the sources, you will be seeing here instead of 30, only 3. So 3 lakh years. Forget about it. Anything greater than 3 lakh, right, will be equal to 3 lakh, or greater than 3 lakh will be around 30 lakh. So it is not going to make any kind of impact, right? So don't get confused that here I have written 30 lakhs and in some of the books or some of the other online resources you will be coming across the 3 lakhs, right? So irrespective of that. Now this is the case which you can always consider for the tripartite division. So the Indus civilization and Vedic culture. So in this case, if you consider Indus civilization, where we have not been able to decipher the scripts, and even in Vedic culture, right? So we were not able to have the sufficient archaeological evidences in order to confirm the written evidences for this period, right? So you can consider, or you can say that evidences were available but not deciphered. And obviously the third division or third part is same as historic period. Historic period. Fine. So it is known as historic period. Again, the period for which the written evidences were available, right? So what is the example of this? So you can consider its example from Mahajanpada's period, right, till date. Mahajanpada's period till date is the historic period, right? So sometimes you hear some of the press conferences or some of the what you can consider elocutions or some of the other public programs where you will be coming or you may come across these different kinds of things. Fine. Anyway, now here if you consider the part of this, so who had given this tripartite division of history, right, which is not exactly this one, another kind of tripartite division you can consider. So there was a German historian who was the first historian to give us a tripartite division of the history, right? And that tripartite history is dividing actual history into three different periods, which will be which you can consider as the ancient, medieval, and modern, right? So through the point of view of chronology. Okay. So according to chronology, here you do have three different divisions, so which is also called as a tripartite division. So chronologically, tripartite division by